work with lots of different people, and I also get to design sometimes, which is fun, and I get to go to different places, so I'm not always working at home. I get to get out. I like that too.
Listening task 1. Answers. The first question was, what's your job? And the second question was, what do you like about your job? Listening task 2. Now you'll hear the same people answering one more question. The question is, what's difficult about your job? Which group of people does Greg talk about? He's the first speaker. Which group of people does Mike talk about? He's the second speaker.
What's difficult about my job is working with different time zones overseas. So I sometimes have to work on the weekend, which is okay, but then I don't have the answers that I need or want on a Monday morning. Also it requires putting a lot of time and money into new samples, because customers always want to see something new, and they often want to see something new before we've sold any of the old samples that we've made. So that can be quite frustrating and time consuming. And then finding new customers sometimes is a challenge, because most of our time is spent producing stuff rather than selling stuff. So that's the biggest challenge, I think.
What's difficult about teaching, I guess, is motivating students. So if you're teaching a subject that maybe they're not too interested in at the beginning, how do you get them to participate in class? How do you get them to do readings that they need to do on background? How do you actually get them interested in the subject that you're teaching? Because if you have a classroom full of bored students, they don't really learn. So I think that's the most difficult thing.
Listening task 2. Answers. Greg talks about difficulties with customers. Mike talks about difficulties with students. Listening task 3. Now you'll hear Greg telling us about a typical day in his job. Does he spend the whole day in one place?
Okay, a typical day for me would be to spend a couple of hours in the office checking emails, doing a little bit of work on designs, and then checking in on producers. So that might just be phone calls or visiting them at their shop, at the market, or at their home, and also then buying supplies to deliver to producers. And also when I visit the producers, I have to spend time with them, because the big part of my job is the relationship with them, and they often expect me to stay longer than I would normally need to stay. I think I need to stay. So yeah, that takes time too.
Listening task 3. Answers. Does Greg spend the whole day in one place? No, he doesn't. Some of the day he's at home, and some of the day he's out at markets and shops. Listening task 4. Before we listen to part 4, there's a word you need to know to understand the conversation. Do you know what we call it when two things are not together? They are apart. They don't touch each other. They are not joined or connected. They are separate. This word can also be a verb, to separate, and the noun is separation. So remember that meaning for the conversation. Separate. Now, what do you think the good and bad things about working for yourself could be? What's good and what's bad about working from home? In the last part of this unit, you'll hear Tom and I talking about these things. What advantages and disadvantages do we discuss? Are they the same as your ideas? Hello, this is Katie, and I'm talking to Tom.
Hello.
And we are in Tom's lounge, and we're talking about work.
Yes. Are we working?
I suppose we are working. We're working and talking about work. And what I wanted to ask you about was how you feel about working from home.
Okay, yes, I can say a few things about that, because I've spent many years mainly working from home in Thailand and in Spain and in England on and off as well.
So that's different between us, because I've only been working from home for the last year or so. Before that I went to work, whereas long time you've been working at home.
Yeah, so I think for me the disadvantages are becoming more obvious and more apparent over time than, the initial advantages are, you create your own work time, you set your own hours, you get up when you want, you don't have to waste time travelling. But when you've done it for a long time, for example, I'm starting to feel quite lonely. Because
you're at home all day on your own?
Yeah, and I don't mix with people, I don't talk to other people during the day much, so I miss human contact a lot.
I can see how that would happen. I think for me, because it's still fairly new, I just absolutely love it. I love the fact that I decide when I start work and I decide what I'm wearing. This is a big thing for me. I actually quite like working in my pyjamas.
Yeah, they always joke that when you start working freelance or at home, then you can work in your underwear, if you like.
Yeah, I don't work in my underwear, just so nobody
I
has
do
any.
Sometimes. No, I didn't say that.
And I like, I thought to begin with maybe I would work less, but actually I think I work more because it's difficult, and maybe this is a disadvantage. It's difficult to stop work because when you work from home, anytime you're in the house, you can feel like you're at work. Do you have that?
Yes, very much. And it's one of the hardest things is to create a separation between your work and your home. So, when you go out to work and you come home, it feels really nice to be home. But if you don't leave the building, then it's difficult to create the separation. And now I have a separate office, which is great because I can sort of shut the door, and when I shut the door I've left work, but still it's difficult. I can find myself sometimes going into the room, starting work again, and you work sometimes there's nothing stopping you working until midnight.
Yeah, I remember reading years ago about a guy who worked from home, and what he did to give himself a feeling like he was going to work is that he would get up normally, have a shower, put his work clothes on, go out of the front door, walk around the house and come in the back door to give himself the feeling that he'd left home when he was going to work.
And this is what my friend Ben recommended to me 2 weeks ago. He said, why don't you get on your bike, ride around for 15 minutes and then arrive back at the house and then start work. And I think it could work.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But if I were to say to you now, okay, choose now. Do you want to go to work every day, leave the house and go to an office, for example? Or do you want to continue working at home? Which would you choose?
If I had the choice, I would choose a mixture. The ideal working situation for me would be to have a shared office somewhere that was within 15 minutes walk of the house, that I could go to perhaps 3 days a week and then work from home the other 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how hard we're working. But yeah, I think a nice balance would be good between the two.
Listening task 4. Answers. The advantages we talked about were being able to start and finish work when you want, being able to wear the clothes you want, not having to travel. The disadvantages we talked about were being lonely because you don't spend as much time with other people, always feeling like you are at work because your job is in your home. Well done! You've practiced listening to natural, unscripted speech on the topic of jobs and employment.
Recuerda que en el ebook que acompaña este podcast encontrarás más ejercicios que te ayudarán a desarrollar tu listening. Thank you for listening. Bye.
95.7
Cervecería La Gavina, calle Puente Arias, número 1, 28002, Madrid. Metro cercano, Cartagena y Prosperidad. Ven y visítanos.
Ecoluz, iluminamos tu vida. Ecoluz, una mejor selección. Ecoluz, los últimos diseños. Ecoluz, somos la luz de su hogar.
Zap Inglés, vocabulario.
Level 2, Unit 1, Jobs and Work.
Este podcast de vocabulario con inglés real se acompaña de un ebook que puedes descargar en inglés.fm.
In this unit, you're going to learn words and phrases for talking about jobs, as well as improving your pronunciation and listening. Meaning and pronunciation 1. First, we're going to learn the vocabulary. You need to try and answer my questions to guess the words and phrases. Whenever you hear a beep, you should repeat. Here we go. If you have a job, you are employed, employed, employed. And so, what's the opposite? If you don't have a job, you are unemployed, unemployed. I'm unemployed at the moment. We have quite a few phrases with the word job. If you're unemployed, you need to look for a job. Notice how the words link. For look for a job. Or find a job. The words link here too. Find a job. I need to find a job. When you look for a job, and you find one you want, what do you need to do?